My beloved brothers and sisters, when we talk about sacrifice, many of us think about giving up food during fasting or sharing some of our wealth with the needy. But today I want to take you back in history to a day, a moment, a battlefield that shook the heavens and touched the hearts of believers forever. A day where the sands of Karbala were stained not with ordinary blood, but with the blood of purity, of piety, of unshakable devotion to Allah. This was not just any moment. It was the 10th of Muharram, known to us as Ashura. And at its center stood a man who refused to bow to tyranny, a man whose heartbeat echoed the call of justice. Imam Hussein ibn Ali, A.S.E., the grandson of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, faced a test that was unimaginable, a test where he had to watch his family, his companions, even his infant child face the blade of cruelty, yet his eyes never bend away from Allah. Why did Imam Hussein say sacrifice 72 of his closest family members? Was it for power? Was it for recognition? No, it was solely, purely and sincerely for the sake of Allah. You see, my brothers and sisters, when falsehood begins to wear the cloak of religion, when injustice is painted as leadership, when corruption begins to rule in the name of piety, then silence becomes a sin. And Imam Hussein A.S. was not someone who would ever be silent in the face of oppression. The regime at that time wanted allegiance. But allegiance to what? To injustice, to the distortion of truth, to a system that contradicted the very teachings of the Prophet. Imam Hussein stood tall and said, a man like me can never give allegiance to a man like him. And that single stand, that refusal to submit, became the spark that ignited centuries of inspiration. My beloved brothers and sisters, we are living in a time where truth is often dressed in falsehood and falsehood is presented as truth. Where standing for what is right may isolate you and silence may earn you acceptance. But when we look into history and draw strength from those who came before us, we see that the path of truth was never paved with comfort or luxury. It was always a path of sacrifice, of resilience, and of sincere devotion to Allah. Among the most striking examples of this is the life and stand of Imam Hussein alayhi, the noble grandson of our beloved Prophet, who refused to remain silent in the face of injustice, even if it meant sacrificing his own family. He witnessed the direction in which the leadership of the Ummah was heading, and it was not a direction that reflected the values taught by the Prophet. It was not the path of mercy, justice, and accountability. It was a system that had become corrupt, power-hungry, and careless of the sacred trust of leadership. When the one in charge becomes a threat to the faith and its followers, then remaining silent becomes complicity. At that moment, standing up is not a choice, it is a duty. Imam Hussein stood knowing full well the consequences. He did not gather an army to conquer lands or to seize power. He gathered those who believed in the truth, those who understood that sacrificing everything in this world is still a small price to pay if it pleases Allah. When truth demands sacrifice, silence is not an option. And Imam Hussein taught us that with his life. He could have easily blended into the system, remained quiet and lived a comfortable life. But he knew that such silence would validate oppression. And how could the grandson of the Prophet validate something the Prophet stood against with his entire mission? His silence would have echoed through the generations as an endorsement of injustice. So instead, he chose to rise, not with a mighty army, but with courage, faith, and a heart connected to Allah. Imagine, my brothers and sisters, what it means to knowingly walk into a battlefield where the odds are completely against you. He had only a handful of companions, about 72 souls, while the opposing army numbered in the thousands. From a worldly perspective, it was certain death, but from a spiritual lens, it was eternal success. When you know you're standing for the truth, even if the entire world turns against you, Allah will never abandon you. And that's what Imam Hussein showed us. He stood alone in the world, but he stood firm with Allah, and that strength is something no army can overpower. The sacrifice was not impulsive, it was not emotional rebellion. It was thoughtful, deliberate, and rooted in the values of Islam. He stood not just to oppose a ruler, he stood to protect the essence of the Deen. He knew that if this corruption continued unchallenged, the very foundation of Islam would begin to crack. And sometimes, in order to preserve a structure, you must stand firm even if it means enduring personal loss. What he gave up in Karbala was not just his own life, but the lives of his brothers, his sons, his nephews, and even a 6-month-old baby. Can you imagine the level of submission to Allah it takes to witness that and still not waver? To say, oh Allah, this is all for you, while holding the lifeless body of your infant child, that's not something ordinary hearts can bear. That is the strength of faith when rooted deeply in the love of Allah. He never raised his voice for power, he never demanded leadership for himself. In fact, his journey was not toward a throne, but toward truth. He was invited to Kufa by people who claimed they were ready to stand with him. But when pressure came, many of those same people turned away. And that's a lesson for us. Not everyone who praises you will stay with you when the time to sacrifice comes. But the one who remains with Allah, even when people leave, has already succeeded. Imam Musa faced betrayal, thirst, hunger, and brutality, but nothing made him turn back. Why? Because he was not motivated by ego. He was not driven by political agendas. His mission was divine. His heart had already submitted, and he was not seeking worldly approval. And that's the difference between a sincere leader and a self-serving one. One looks to Allah for approval, the other looks to the crowd. And when you seek the face of Allah, you will walk paths others fear, because your reward is not with people, it's with the one who created you. Let us reflect on the moment when he addressed the opposing army. He said, if you do not believe in religion, at least be free in your world. He was trying to awaken their conscience. He wasn't speaking with hatred. He was reminding them of their own dignity, because even in the face of death, he did not lose his noble character. And that is the sign of someone connected to Allah. Your manners don't disappear when you are tested. Your values don't shift with the pressure. You remain firm, because you know that the real judge is not the one holding the sword. It's the one above the heavens. That moment in Karbala wasn't just history. It was a message, a legacy, a torch that continues to shine in the darkest of times. It tells us that if you stand for truth, you may be outnumbered, you may be outpowered, but you will never be outdone in the sight of Allah. And when truth demands, your voice, your silence becomes betrayal. We must ask ourselves, are we silent in moments where we should be speaking? Are we standing on the side of comfort while the side of truth remains abandoned? Imam Hazail Ais didn't rise with weapons, he rose with values. His refusal to submit was not based on arrogance but on principle. And today we must be the inheritors of that principle. In our daily lives, in our families, in our communities, when falsehood is celebrated, do we clap along? Or do you remember that one man stood with 72 against thousands because silence was no longer an option? It is easy to speak when you have support, but the real test is speaking when you are alone, when your truth is unpopular, when your stand may cost you your job, your friends, your comfort. That's when you remember Karbala. That's when you remember that sacrifice is the currency of the believer. And when you spend it sincerely, Allah repays it in ways beyond imagination. Some may wonder, why did he go knowing the outcome? Why not preserve himself and work from within the system? The answer is simple. You cannot purify something that has completely corrupted its roots. Sometimes reform requires resistance, not compromise. Sometimes you must remove yourself from the corrupt structure altogether and bear the pain of standing alone, because if your silence validates oppression, your words become empty. And look at how Allah honored him. Even after centuries, the mention of Imam Hussein Ais still shakes hearts. His name is remembered with love. His sacrifice is honored across the world. And those who opposed him, they are remembered in shame. This shows us the power of sincerity. When you do something purely for the sake of Allah, it lives on far beyond your life. People may not understand you today, but if your intention is sincere, Allah will preserve your legacy in the hearts of generations to come. Let us not limit this remembrance to emotions and stories. Let it transform how we live. Let us teach our children that standing for truth is more important than fitting in. Let us raise families who don't fear being different if it means being right. Let us build a society where the Karbala within us stands against every injustice we see, be it in our homes, our offices, our schools, or our nations. The stand of Imam Hussein was not just against a ruler, it was against a mindset. A mindset that values power over principles. numbers over sincerity, and fear over faith. He shattered that mindset with the most powerful weapon, complete trust in Allah. And that is what we need to revive today. The courage to speak even when we tremble. The faith to act even when we are unsure. The belief that Allah sees all, knows all, and rewards according to the purity of the heart, not the size of the crowd. Every time you're faced with a decision between truth and ease, remember Karbala. Every time you are asked to be silent when injustice occurs, remember that silence once meant betrayal. And every time your heart feels weak, remember the heart that buried his own family yet remained firm. That was not a heart powered by emotion, it was powered by faith. If ever there was a man who could have used his lineage as a shield, it was Imam Hussein Ahsan, but he didn't. He didn't ask for special treatment. He didn't expect miracles to save him. He simply relied on Allah. And that reliance became a storm that shattered generations of fear. He became the voice of the voiceless. And through his stand, truth was revived. When you look into the pages of Islamic history, you will find stories that are not just meant to be narrated, but to be lived. Stories that were never written for entertainment, but for awakening. Among them stands a moment so profound, so heavy in meaning, that its echo continues to shake the hearts of those who truly reflect. It is the story of a family who laid down their lives not for wealth, not for power, not for fame, but to protect your faith. The family of Imam Hussein Esser, those 72 blessed souls who chose death over dishonor, who preferred thirst with dignity over comfort in disgrace, who were willing to be forgotten by the world so that the message of Islam would never be forgotten. Today, many of us take our religion for granted. We are born into it. We live around it. And sometimes we forget what it cost others to bring it to us in its pure form. We recite the Shahada, we pray our Salah, we read the Quran, and yet many of us do not realize that the ability to do all of this came through the sacrifices of those who refused to let this deen be hijacked. When corruption entered the leadership, when justice began to fade, and when falsehood wore the robe of religion, there was a need for someone to say, this is not what the Prophet taught. And that someone was Imam Hussein Aisim, and those with him were not simply numbers. They were the pillars of resistance, each one carrying the weight of truth with full submission. Through Allah, let us ask ourselves a serious question. Would we have had the same courage? Would we stand with the truth if it cost us everything? Because for them, it literally did. One by one, the companions fell. Each one was a heartbeat in the mission of truth. Each one had a family, dreams, hopes, but they gave it all away for something far greater, the preservation of Islam as it was taught by the Prophet. And what was the driving force? It was their belief that nothing is more valuable than pleasing Allah, that no life is worth living if it means compromising on the core of the faith. And let us not forget, these weren't strangers to each other. This was a family. Fathers, sons, uncles, brothers, standing side by side, knowing what awaited them, yet still smiling because they were doing it for Allah. Among them was a child as young as 6 months old, Ali Ahzaqar, who was killed while in his father's arms. What kind of faith does it take to bury your child with your own hands and still say, oh Allah, if this is what pleases you, then take until you are pleased? This is not poetry, this is not exaggeration, this is reality. This is what it means to submit fully to Allah, to give not just what you can spare, but even what you hold dearest, without hesitation, because you know the truth is priceless. Sometimes people ask, why didn't Imam Hussein just avoid the situation? He could have taken another route. He could have avoided confrontation. He could have made peace. But at what cost? At the cost of legitimizing tyranny? At the cost of teaching future generations that staying quiet in the face of injustice is acceptable? No. He knew that if he remained silent, that silence would be louder than 1,000 words. And so he chose to speak with his actions, even if his words would be silent. He wasn't just fighting a ruler. He was fighting a system that had started to misrepresent Islam. He was challenging a leadership that no longer reflected the values of mercy, accountability, and humility. And in doing so, he preserved for us the real image of what leadership in Islam is supposed to look like. Real leadership is not about titles. It's not about being in the spotlight. It's about responsibility. It's about standing up for the oppressed. It's about protecting the rights of the weak. It's about walking humbly before Allah and being a shepherd for the people. Imam Hussein refused to pledge allegiance to someone who had abandoned these principles. And in doing so, he showed us what integrity looks like. He showed us that even if everyone turns against you, if Allah is with you, you are never truly alone. He was offered safety, he was offered comfort, but he chose hardship. Why? Because sometimes comfort is a bigger test than calamity. Sometimes when the world offers you an easy path, it's actually pulling you away from the truth. And Imam Hussein, I saw that clearly. He could not in good conscience allow people to think that leadership was now about greed and arrogance. He had to make a stand. And through that stand, he reminded the ummah of what real strength looks like. It's not in numbers, it's not in weapons, it's in conviction. It's in standing firm when everyone else has fallen. And what about the women and children in his camp? They were not passive bystanders, they were part of the mission. Their presence was a testament to the fact that this was not a battle for power. Who brings their wives, sisters, daughters, and children to war if the goal is to conquer land? No. They were there because this was a spiritual mission. They were there to bear witness, to carry the message, and to ensure that the world would never forget. Among them was Zainab Asis, the sister of Hussein, who even after the massacre stood with unmatched strength to expose the cruelty of the oppressors and protect the dignity of those who had been martyred. Her courage in the face of humiliation reminds us that even when everything is taken from you, your voice and your honor remain powerful weapons. So many of us today look for examples to follow. We look at celebrities, athletes, influencers, but the greatest role models are already in our history. The family of Hussein Assad did not seek attention. They sought the pleasure of Allah. And in doing so, Allah elevated them. Their names are remembered not because they lived luxuriously, but because they died with dignity. They are honored not because of what they owned, but because of what they gave up. And their story is not just for one school of thought. It is for all those who claim to love the Prophet. Because to love him is to love his family. And to love his family is to honor their legacy, not just with words, but with actions. We must ask ourselves, what are we willing to sacrifice for our faith? Are we even willing to give up our bad habits? Are we willing to turn off what displeases Allah for even a few moments? Are we willing to stand for what is right in our own homes, our workplaces, our societies? Because Karbala was not just about a battlefield, it was about a mindset that refuses to bow to falsehood, a mindset that says, even if I am alone, the truth is still the truth. And today, that mindset is needed more than ever. When you look around the world, you see injustice, oppression, corruption, sometimes even by those who claim to represent religion. And you wonder, where is the courage to speak out? Where is the message forward? Am I someone who stands for truth, even when it's unpopular? Am I someone who values justice more than comfort? Am I someone who is willing to sacrifice, not just wealth or time, but my ego, my laziness, my silence for the sake of Allah? The family of Imam Hussein Hassin gave everything so that you and I could live with the truth. They stood between falsehood and the Qur'an. They ensured that the message of the Prophet would not be twisted by political agenda. And today we are the beneficiaries of their courage. We are the inheritors of their sacrifice. But inheritance comes with responsibility. It means we must not betray what they preserved. It means we must honor their legacy not just with our tongues, but with our lives. In life, we are constantly faced with choices that test not only our patience, but our sincerity in faith. And one of the most powerful tests is when you are right, yet you are treated as if you are wrong. When you hold the truth, but the world calls you a liar. When you are honest, but people paint you as the guilty one. It is in those moments that many hearts are shattered, many minds become confused, and many souls feel abandoned. But know this, Allah sees, Allah knows, and Allah is never unjust. There are times when your silence is misunderstood. Your kindness is taken for weakness. Your patience is taken for fear. But do not be disheartened, because what matters most is not how people see you. What truly matters is how Allah sees you. If He is pleased with you, the displeasure of the world carries no weight. And if He is with you, even when the entire world walks away, you are never alone. We often forget that truth does not need to be loud to be powerful. They'll be smiling, laughing, enjoying their lives while you carry the weight of pain they caused. But understand this, Allah is not unaware. He is not unjust, and He is never late. The plan of Allah is built on wisdom, not on our timelines. So when someone lies about you, mocks you, breaks your trust, or leaves you in the middle of hardship, don't let it destroy your faith in goodness. Don't become like them in retaliation. Stay firm, stay sincere, and let your silence be your strength. Because one day, when the dust settles and the noise fades, truth will always rise. And it doesn't need you to scream. It needs you to trust Allah. Remember that one of the names of Allah is Al-Haq, the truth. And when you align yourself with truth, even when you are alone, you are in the company of the Almighty. This is why the prophets, peace be upon them all, were never afraid of being alone. Their strength, dirat, come from the number of people around them. It came from the clarity in their hearts and the certainty that Allah never abandons those who stand for the truth. When Ibrahim was thrown into the fire, he didn't scream, he didn't panic. He said, Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for me, and He is the best disposer of affairs. And the fire which should have disposed him became cool and safe. Why? Because when you put your trust in Allah, even the things that were sent to break you will end up elevating you. In today's world, people are quick to judge. They don't always care about facts or evidence. They form opinions based on rumors, based on what others say, based on incomplete pictures. And if you try to defend yourself every time someone misunderstands you, you will waste your entire life doing just that. Sometimes the best response is silence. Not because you're weak, but because you know Allah will speak for you. He will clear your name. He will expose falsehood. He will restore your dignity. And when He does it, no one can undo it. When He honors you, no one can disgrace you. And when He elevates you, no one can pull you down. This is the kind of trust we need to build with our Creator. Not only in times of ease, but especially in times of hardship. Many people ask, how can I remain calm when I'm being treated unfairly? How do I keep my peace when people are lying about me, attacking me, turning others against me? The answer lies in the beautiful patience described in the Qur'an, Sabrun Jamil, a beautiful patience. Not a patience full of complaints, not a patience soaked in bitterness, but a patience filled with dignity, faith, and reliance on Allah. Know that your story is not finished yet. That whatever wrong has been done to you, it is not the final chapter. That the one writing your story has a better ending prepared, one that will make you grateful for every silent tear you ever shed, every insult you ever swallowed, every injustice you ever endured. Because nothing is wasted in the court of Allah. Not a word, not a sigh, not a single heartbeat of pain. It is not just about trusting Allah when everything is going well. True trust is when everything seems to fall apart, when the people you trusted turn against you, when the doors you hope would open stay shut, when your prayers seem to be delayed. That's when your heart is tested. And if you hold firm in those moments, you will see what others never get to see. You will witness how Allah compensates in ways no human can, how He brings comfort through the Quran, how He sends signs through strangers, how He heals your heart without anyone even noticing. That is the reward of patience. It is not just ease after difficulty, it is growth, it is strength, it is nearness to Allah like never before. We live in a time where people seek validation from others more than from Allah. We want to be seen, to be appreciated, to be defended. But the true believer understands that being unseen by people does not mean being unrecognized by Allah. Some of the most beloved people to Allah are the ones who are unknown to the world. They live quiet lives, they are not famous, they are not praised by others, but in the heavens their names are written among the honored. Their hearts are clean, their intentions are sincere, their deeds are hidden, but Allah sees every bit of it. And on the day of judgment, when the scales are brought forth and the truth is revealed, those who are insulted in this world will be honored before all of creation, and those who were falsely accused will be clothed in light, and those who bore injustice with patience will be among the closest to their Lord. So do not allow the behavior of others to poison your heart. Do not allow their lies to make you bitter. You are not responsible for what others do. You are only responsible for how you respond. And if your response is pleasing to Allah, then that is your victory. Because real success is not in winning arguments. It is not in proving others wrong. It is in remaining upright in the eyes of Allah, even when your world is falling apart. And if you do that, you will find a peace that no one can understand, because it is not from this world. It is from the one who created peace. There are people who will try to break you just to feel better about themselves. People who will try to drag you into darkness because they cannot stand your light. Don't fight them with hatred. Don't compete with their jealousy. Just keep moving, keep growing, and keep trusting the one who sees everything. Because when you allow your pain to refine you instead of destroy you, you become a mountain. Firm, immovable, respected. And remember, the ones who tried to bury you didn't know that you were a seed. And when Allah waters you with His mercy,